Hi there, this is an updated dual boot tutorial for Nobara OS and Windows on the Lenovo Legion Go. But before we proceed, I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into. So what should be the end result after this video, right? So the controller should be working. So what we could do here is go into the settings. If we go into the controller, you'll see that if we test the controller, you'll see that the Dualsense Edge controller. The Dualsense Edge controller is what's being emulated. And that lets us get the back buttons. So if I press the back buttons pop up in Steam. The trackpad will also show up. And you could have the Legion buttons mapped to start select, and then you could have home be mapped down here. And then quick access menu is home plus X, so home plus X and everything. So it'll be that. Gyro should also be working. So if you go into the calibration, you see the gyro is moving. And then finally for the LED settings, you could get it to work in Steam. Or alternatively, you could get a TDP plugin to do RGB control. So if I turn on the right LED, you can see control the LED, and you could change the colors, or you could change it to like a spiral or a rainbow spiral, etc. I prefer the plugin, but you can also get Steam to also work for manipulating the LED if you prefer that. Besides that, we'll get TDP working, and you'll get per game TDP controls as well. But then as for things that aren't working, you should go into this website up here, this Legion Go Tricks site. And here it just is going to be updated with the status of stuff that is and isn't working on the Legion Go. So for example, if we go to known bugs, or actually scroll up a little to what has issues. The biggest issue right now is that for screen refresh rates, the 144 hertz rate, and 144 hertz is really, really buggy. It works, but it's really buggy, and the frame limiter is really buggy, and it might cap your frame rates to 72 FPS while in 144 hertz. Basically, 144 hertz is really buggy. But 60 hertz is working perfectly. Basically, you could get frame rate limiters working and all of that stuff. But this, I would say, is the only major bug, really. The battery indicator is sometimes inconsistent. So if we go into here, it says 45%, but sometimes this percent doesn't show up at all. But this time it's working. But anyways, I could show an easy workaround for that. That lets you see the battery percentage consistently in this video. Besides that, though, there's other small little known bugs that you can see through here. But these all mostly have a working solution, except for that pesky 144 hertz bug. The 144 hertz is buggy, but for everything else here, there's some sort of workaround or fix for the most part. One thing I will say is that I will be reusing parts of the old dual boot video in this one, just because some things just haven't changed. It's basically the same. So just know that for this. Before we get started, I want to go over some hardware you're going to need. So here, you're going to need a physical keyboard. You're going to need a mouse. Although I guess technically it's optional. You could use the trackpad on the Legion Go controller if you want. But need a mouse. I prefer using a mouse. And then you're going to need a physical connection to the device. So I have the mouse and keyboard connected via this USB hub to the Legion Go. So, but you're going to need that physical connection for the install. You'll also need a USB stick. I have an 8 GB stick here. You're going to need one large enough to fit the operating system, since we're going to turn this into an operating system installer USB. And I have a USB-C adapter just so I could you could either plug it in to the Legion Go, or in my case, I'm actually going to put it into the hub on the side and just plug it into the hub. But either way works. You can plug it in directly or use a hub. And finally, make sure you take out any micro SD cards right now before we proceed, because the micro SD card could interfere with installation. So it's better to just take it out if you have one in there. And with that, let's get started. So for the start of the process, we need to start downloading a bunch of files. So first you want to go to the Nobara website. And here on the Nobara website, go down and start downloading the actual ISO. So here is the Nobara Steam Deck ISO. We'll be doing Nobara 38 in this tutorial. But for when you're using this tutorial, maybe a newer version is out, but we're going to use 38. And then here we also want to get Balena Etcher. So let's download the portable version for Windows. Yeah, let's get the portable version. So let's just download that. And finally, you're going to need this Resizer, partition Resizer. You just download the free version and install it. In this case, I already have it installed, but let's just let the downloads go through and then continue from there. So as you can see, my downloads are finished. And I've actually already installed the Resizer, so I have the Resizer here already on the desktop, but make sure you go ahead and install it and then run it. And here what you're going to want to do is we're going to want to resize down your Windows partition so you can fit Linux onto your hard drive. So this is currently my Windows partition. It looks a little different because I'm on Windows 10 right now. So you could ignore like the name and stuff. You should look for your C drive and you could resize it and just resize it down. So take this here and just resize it down to however much you want to give to Linux, right? Let's say in my case, I'll just because this is a demo video, I'll just lower Windows down to like 40 gigs, and the rest will go to Linux. So that 238 that's left will go to Linux. But let's just do that. And if you hit OK, what's going to happen is it's going to apply changes, and then it'll prompt you to reboot after we hit OK with everything. So it's going to need a reboot now. So let's just let it restart. And you can now see that it's going to do the resizing operation right now. So now it's just resizing the disk. And then afterwards, it'll boot into Windows. So let's just give it a moment, and we should be back in Windows. And now we're back in Windows. So if we open up that Resizer now, and just take a look, and just confirm that everything resized, we will see that now there should be a bunch of empty space. So now there's this unallocated space that will be used for Linux. And you could choose whatever sizes you want here. This is completely up to you on how much you want to give to one OS versus the other. But that's that. So now that this is done, next what we're going to do is we're going to install Balena Etcher. So here's that Balena Etcher file that we downloaded, and let's just run it. And what we're going to do is use this to create our bootable USB for the installer. So we just give it a moment and let it start up. There we go. So what you do is you flash from file, and you go to downloads and choose that ISO we downloaded, and here you plug in. This is where you plug in your USB stick into the device, and the USB will pop up when you click select target. Right now there's no targets because the USB is not in. If you plug it in, the target should show up. Now I've already got the installer on the USB, so I'm going to skip this step. But all you would need to do is select target, select the USB, then click flash, and then continue from there. And then once you're done, we can finally get started with the actual install process. So we can just shut down. One thing that maybe you would want to do is in Legion space, if you've remapped any of the back buttons, just turn the remappings off. But that's kind of optional. You could also do it later. Anyways, so shut down and then boot into the BIOS. So now we need to go into the BIOS. So hold the volume up button and press the power button. Something I would recommend is that you have the latest BIOS installed, which has a fix for TDP that is required for good TDP control on Linux. So if we go into the BIOS setup, we just click more settings. So first we're going to want to go into configuration, and we want to change the thermal policy from STT to STEMP. So what STT, what that does is that when you set TDP, custom TDP, STT will eventually override it with what it thinks is better. Whereas the STEMP policy should always respect the TDPs that you set. So if you want to do custom TDP control, you're going to want the STEMP mode enabled. But besides that, the other thing we need here is we need to disable secure boot. So if you go into security, if you scroll down, there's a secure boot option, and you want to change that from enabled to disabled. So change it to disabled, then you could exit, and then you just exit saving changes, and exit changes and leave. And now that that's done, we can keep going. Now that secure boot's disabled, now we need to plug in our USB. And you could either plug it in directly into your device with like a USB-C adapter, or if yours is already USB-C, you just plug it in directly in, like the bottom port. I'm just going to plug it into my hub over here, and let's just plug it in and then get into the BIOS again. So hold the volume up, press power. And from here, now that we're in the BIOS, we want to click boot menu this time and click on the USB stick. And then here, it's going to be a little hard to see right now, but there's going to be an option for start Nobara. So click the top option, start Nobara, and hit enter on the keyboard. And then it will start booting into the installer. This will take a good amount of time. So I would say, go take a coffee break or something, and we'll be back for when it's fully loaded. All right, so now that the installer has loaded, there's a few things we're going to want to do. We're going to want to get rid of this little warning sign for the internet. But before we do that, for anyone that's using a trackpad, we'll need to configure it so that you could tap with the trackpad, because right now tapping doesn't actually click anywhere. So what we do is click on the the little icon in the bottom left. And here, search for touchpad. One click with the keyboard, and then here, you're going to see a tap to click option. So click tap to click, and then hit apply. Then afterwards, your touchpad will let you click and close stuff. So this will, you'll need that for the proceed. But yeah, besides that, let's connect internet. So what I'm going to actually do is close this out. Hit yes. And here, connect your internet. Now that I connected Wi-Fi, one more thing is it's asking you to connect power in that little warning. So I'm just going to connect power really quick and make sure all the warnings are gone. Nice. Okay, so let's just go through the installer. And this part's actually very easy. So just choose like your time zone, your keyboard. And this is the part where this is also very easy. Just hit replace a partition. And remember that blank space? Just click the blank space. So this blank space will now be filled with the operating system. Easy. So then click next. And here you're going to want to type in like your username that you want to use. This is the username of the device, not your Steam username. And you can make this whatever you want. But I'm going to do Deck, just because there's some Decky plugins that assume like it's a Steam Deck. So it uses the Deck username. And there's other small things like that. So I'm just going to use Deck as my username. But you could choose whatever you want. Like, honestly, you actually could. And here I'm just going to name this, like, I don't know, Deck Nobara PC. You can leave it alone. Up to you. And then finally, you want to type in a password, but make sure you don't forget this password. Make sure you'll remember it, because recovering this one will be, it'll be annoying, because this is not like an online account. This is going to be your machine's password, right? So there's no like online backup or anything like that. So I'm just going to type in a password. Cool. And then let's just do that, hit next. And it just gives you a final summary of what's going to be installed. So it's going to leave your Windows partition, your yellow partition here. The Windows should still be there after the install. And the orange will be Nobara after the install. That's all you got to do. Click install. And now we wait. This will take a while, so go get another coffee or something if you already got one. And I will be back in a little bit. And the install is now complete. So what we just do is you click the restart now and click done. And it will restart your device. So for anyone that rebooted after the install, they might have booted into Windows. And if that happens, it's not a big deal. We could just fix that now. So there's two ways we could go about this. We could first go into the BIOS setup. And here, if you'll notice, there's two operating systems installed. There is Fedora, which is what Nobara is based on. So Fedora and then Windows. And for anyone that has Windows booting after the reboot, basically that means that Windows should be above Fedora, right? So this is just the boot order, and you need to change the boot order to whatever you want it to be. So you could leave Windows first if you want, do whatever you need to. You just press you could tap it and move up which one you want first or not. For the sake of this this video, I'm going to be having Linux booting first, but do whatever you prefer. And for those that prefer leaving Windows first, you go back into that, the BIOS and instead go into the boot menu. From here, you just tap the one that you want to boot into. So in this case, if you want to boot Windows, you just tap Windows. If you want to boot Linux, you just tap Linux with your finger and it'll just boot straight into it. For this tutorial, obviously, I'm going to continue with the Linux side, so let's just tap that. From here, you're just going to go through the setup, log into your Steam account, and all that stuff. We're going to continue our setup in desktop mode, so just get through all the Steam setup, and I'll see you afterwards. So after doing a fresh install, and you get to the login screen, the controller might not be working. You can see right now the controller is not working, and this is a bug that's going to be fixed, but in the meanwhile, use your keyboard and mouse and get logged in. And then here, manually go to the desktop, and we will run a fix to fix the controller. So once we're on the desktop, you're going to be prompted to update. Just accept, let it update. You close this out. You could close this out in the background for now. And then it's going to ask your password, so just type in your password. Okay. So now that that's going, you just let this go in the background. And meanwhile, let's get that controller fixed. If your controller is broken, it might be that by the time you're seeing this video, the controller is already fixed. But let's just fix it really quick. So if we go into the browser, I'm just going to prompt my password here. And then just prompt yes, that's the updating while it's updating in the background. Let's go to github.com/Legion Go Tricks. And then here we're going to need this add LGO xpad rule. So what this does is this just fix the controller. So let's just download this, download the file, open the folder, and here right click, open in terminal here, then do a chmod +x, add LGO xpad rule. And what this does is exactly the same as if I went to right-click, properties, permissions, and I change it to is executable. So what I did in the terminal was just a shortcut for to do all of that. So it's the exact same thing. So now that that's done, then let's just run it. So we're gonna have to do sudo /add LGO xpad rule. And it's gonna prompt you for your password. Hit yes, this is the updater in the background running, okay. And hit that. Oop, I guess I type out the password. No, let's not reboot now. So if the update finishes and you need to reboot, you could skip that for now. Cool. So now the missing rule has been added. So if we open Steam now, so let's just go close out the browser. If you go to Steam, settings, go to your controller, and you click begin test, you see the inputs are now working now, whereas before they weren't. So that's all you have to do. So let's just exit this and then do a reboot. So start, restart, and just restart the device. And then get back into desktop mode. So now that we're rebooted, we're going to now get the PS5 DualSense Edge controller emulator working. So for that, first, do a sudo systemctl disable -- now handycon.service. And this will just disable the currently existing Xbox controller. So let's disable that. And then if we go to the Legion Go Tricks website, there should be something called HHD. So let's just look for HHD. Where is it? Here we go. So HHD, this is the link for it. But here we're going to want to go here and then go down to the install instructions for Nobara right here. So we're going to just run this step by step. So first, let's just copy this, run this, hit yes, and just let it load. Cool. Next up, we're going to want to do this. Cool. Then next up, go and go there, just one step at a time. So, okay, and now then here, okay. So, all right. Then here's going to prompt us for our password. So, or maybe not. I guess we're already authenticated. Just keep doing this. Okay. Okay, and then finally the last line was sudo reboot. And on reboot, we should see the PS5 controller emulator. So let's just do that and let it reboot. So one thing you might have noticed by now is that when you reboot while in desktop mode, it'll boot back into desktop mode. So we're going to want to go back into gaming mode just to verify that the controller is working. Now that we're back in game mode, you can already see here, it's a good sign that we're seeing the X and circle for the PlayStation. And then here is going to be the home and then the quick access menu. So if we go to home, settings, and just go into the controller, you see the DualSense Edge wireless, this Xbox here. If you see it, all that's happening is that the emulator is taking all the inputs from the Xbox and piping it through the DualSense controller. So this should not actually do anything. But if we go in here and just do a test just to make sure everything's working, everything looks like it's working. Trackpad, X, okay. Let's see the back buttons. Yep, they're all working. Okay, so just verify that it's working here. And then let's also check and make sure the gyro is working. So gyro is registering. And then if you want to adjust the dead zones and stuff as well. And this should also fit, the LED should start working. So let's just make sure the LED is working as well. Yes, the LED is now working as well. So everything is now working with the controller. So after installing HHD, you might have noticed that the left button here is Steam, and the right button will be the quick access menu. And if you would rather have Steam be start and select, and then have start be here and select be here, you can configure that. There actually is a chance that it might already be working for you. And that's because if you use the Windows Legion swap, where on Windows you could swap the start select with the Legion buttons, if you made the change on Windows, it keeps working on Linux. So you might already be done here. But if not, we can actually configure this with a config file. But by the time you're watching this video, there's a chance that there's actually going to be a UI option for this. So this is still a work in progress, but this may be out by the time you're watching this video. But there is going to be a Decky plugin for changing these values. So what you could do here is you can swap the Legion buttons to have, I like left to select. And then afterwards, this becomes the Steam button. This becomes the quick access menu button. But like I said, this is something that may or may not be released by the time you're watching this video. This is just a kind of a preview at this point, because there's still bugs to be worked out, etc. But with that, let's go into the desktop mode and fix things up. So in desktop mode, we want to find this HHD config file. And the easiest way to do this is go to, this is actually a little trick that'll be useful, xdg open. Let me zoom in so you can see it. And you type in a path and it'll open it in your file browser. So if I type in home/.config/hhd, it'll open up the config hhd folder, as you can see. But then in this hhd folder, there's going to be this state.yml file. You could open it with your editor, and then here's where you could see the config. Here's all the documentation about how the config works. So this is all just documentation. Anything with the little pound sign at the beginning is documentation. But if you scroll all the way down, here's the actual settings. So from here, you could change everything, like swap Legion. So you could change this to what were the valid values up here. You kind of need to scroll back and forth to see it, but swap Legion, you can see L is start or L is select or disabled are the valid values for swap Legion. So if I want to have left be start instead, for example, I could go down here and change L to select is L to start. And right now there's a bug on mine where it's showing both of these, but when you see this, there'll probably only be one value where L is start. There you go. But yeah, but you just save the file. Then you could close out the file, and then when you go back into game mode, the controller should be working as you expected. But that's it for changing the config. And there's a lot of other configs in there, as you saw. There's a bunch of things you could change. Like if you want to turn off the LED management by Steam, you could do that here. But like I said, by the time you're watching this video, a UI might already be out, so you might not even have to change this config file. But this is just in case. So after rebooting and going into game mode, you can now see that Steam button's here. And quick access menus on the right. And then this should be start. Yes, cool. All right. With that, the controller is now fully set up. Now we're going to move on to setting up some Decky plugins and other things. All right, so let's get Decky configured. So first, let's go to look up Decky loader GitHub. And on this Decky loader GitHub, if you scroll down, you could use the regular install instructions if you'd like, but it's a little long. I prefer using the quick install. Just copy this line and paste it into terminal. Much easier in my opinion, but just do it. So type that in, type in your password, and that's it. So Decky loader is now installed. So now let's just install a few plugins. So then if we scroll down to resources, there's going to be this RGB plugin and this TDP plugin. So we could just install these. So if you scroll down to install instructions, you could do the quick install. Let's just run this. And then finally here for the simple Decky TDP, there's also a quick install. Okay, that's it. So Decky loader and those plugins should be set up. So now what we do next is set up nested desktop. And what nested desktop does is lets you use the desktop as an app in game mode. So let's just open Steam. And then in Steam, click add game, add non-Steam game, click browse, click all files. And then here, what we're going to want to do is go to /user/bin. And then here there should be a SteamOS nested. There we go. The name of the file. Hit open. And then if we go into add, select a library to game, and then if we go to library and look up nested desktop, it is there. So that will let us run it as an app in game mode. So let's just go back to game mode and make sure everything is running. So now that we're in game mode, you can see down here, there's the Decky plugin, so it's there. And there's our two plugins, right? So for simple Decky TDP, we're going to want to enable the TDP range should be 5 watt to 30 watt. So then here now, this TDP bar will go from 5 to 30. So we want 5 to 30. And I would say recommend set polling, but do like, I don't know, like a 10-second poll. Like there's a thing where the Legion Go BIOS changes the TDP on you, like on the fly, randomly. So if you set a poll rate, and then here we have our RGB, and we just make sure it's working. If we turn on the right controller, it's turning on and off, and you can see it. But if you use the Steam RGB control and prefer that, you can just turn off the RGB lights. That's fine. Cool. All right. So now that that's done, let's just check to make sure the Steam nested desktop is working. So let's go into our library and go to our non-Steam games. I will add Chrome later, so and go into properties and go into game resolution. Set this to native. Now if you run it, now clicks and stuff should work as expected. There we go. Yes. And now also we can configure the display settings. And if we close this out, and what you can actually do is you could let's do like 50% scale. Is that too, maybe that's a little too small. Let's do like 75. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I prefer that scale. Yeah, now nested desktop's working, should be working. And then from here, what you could actually do is if you go into controller settings, what we could do is set a desktop mode. So what I'll do is press square to show all layouts. And in the community layouts, I use this desktop mode. Hang on, there you go. I use this desktop mode layout and hit square to apply. Now from here, what you could do is you could do like this is right click now. This becomes a left click. So if you want to like, I don't know, click on something, you click things like this. This is how I would prefer to do it, where you have a controller layout. By the way, if you open nested desktop and it doesn't load the first time, it's totally fine to just close it and reopen it. Sometimes it only opens on like the second or third try. But yeah, that's it for setting up Decky plugins and nested desktop. Okay, so we're gonna do a few more setting changes. So let's see here. If we go into display, go all the way down to the bottom, there should be these two toggles here. And right now, basically, the tone to the screen is a little weird. But you should enable native color temperature, and it fixes the screen tone. So there's that. And then I would also disable unified frame limit management, because right now here, there's this frame limit slider, but you actually should not change the refresh rate of your screen right now, because the refresh rate on this device, the only ones that really work are 60 and 144 hertz, and they're also kind of buggy. So we're just going to disable the unified frame rate, and that should give us the standard frame limiter. But you'll also see here that if we go to the full performance overlay and show it in Steam, right now it's saying that it's actually running at 144 hertz and it's capping the game, the FPS at 72. And this is a bug where basically the FPS and the screen rate is completely broken. So we're going to run a fix to force it to 60 hertz. You could keep running it at 144 if you'd like, but just know that right now it's buggy, where the 144 will lead to like weird FPS caps. So I would recommend we force it to 60 because 60 FPS works like perfectly. So we'll just do that really quick. But if you want to stay on 144, that's totally up to you. If you want to stay there, you could just ignore the next part of this video. So back on desktop mode, go to Legion Go Tricks website again, and look for this enable 60 hertz script. And here, just download it, click, folder, right click, open in terminal, and do a / enable 60 hertz. Oh, I guess I need to make it executable first. So chmod x enable 60 hertz. You could also just do it as I showed you in the video before. Right click properties, permissions, is executable. Just click this on, hit OK. So either way works. Then we just do / enable 60 hertz. Okay. And now if we go back to game mode, it should be forcing 60 FPS, and the FPS limiter should work fine. We could delete those files. We don't need that anymore. close, close, return to gaming mode, and let's just check in, make sure it's working. Now that we're in game mode, let's go into the Performance tab, set the Performance Overlay to level 4, and just to make sure this is working, we could show the Performance Overlay and see it now shows 60 Hz, 60 FPS. Now frame limiters aren't supposed to work in the Steam UI, so this will do nothing right now. So let's just open a game real quick and test it out. Okay, so now we're in the game. Let's just see 60 should still be 60, and 30 brings the FPS down to 30, and then 15 should bring it down to 15. Yep, so the FPS limiter is working as expected. Like I said though, if you stayed on 144 Hertz, you could still do everything that I just did. Just know that the frame limiter is really weird on 144 Hertz right now, so it's going to be buggy. Anyways, that's it for this part. So one more thing we're going to want to set up for the TDP plugin is an advanced setup, which helps with stability. So if we go to the Legion Go tricks site, go to resources, if we go to the simple Decky TDP plugin, if you go down, there's going to be a custom TDP method. No, custom device settings, and this is something we need to manually configure. So for here, we're going to enable this experimental TDP method for the Legion Go, where what this will do is after this is done, it will use the built-in like Lenovo power LED right here. So normally you could press like Legion L plus Y, and it will power through the power modes. We're going to update this plugin so it uses the LED, and when you use this, it also does stuff like set fan curves and other things so that the TDP won't like lead to overheating of the device. So using the native TDP functionality is going to be useful just for that. So what we'll do is we just follow these instructions here. So first, let's just make sure ACPI call is there. So if we do sudo mod probe ACPI call, type in your password. I typoed it. There we go. And there's no error showing up. So if I do it again, there's no error showing up, which is good. If you have an error showing up, that means you cannot proceed because you don't have ACPI call installed and you need to install it. So for that, afterwards, we already have the latest Simple Decky TDP installed. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to edit this file and then make these changes. So if we go here, let's copy this. Let's just do that trick before XDG open, paste in that path, but then delete the settings.json at the end so that we could open just the folder. Open the folder, there's that settings.json, open with your editor. Let's zoom in. Now here, what we're going to want to do is let's go back to the browser and add this extra line, enable Legion Go custom TDP true. Let's move this in view. So then from here, what we could do is put that in, make sure you have the comma at the end, make sure this looks exactly like this. It's very important that you have like all the quotes in the right place, all the capitalization and like the comma, all this needs to be there. So that's all you have to do. And then afterwards, if you've already enabled stamp in the BIOS, you're good. If you did that during the initial dual boot setup. And then from here, what we're just going to want to do is reboot the device and see if the TDP is working in game mode. So I will reboot and see you guys all in game mode again. Now that we're in game mode, I'm going to just show you that the fix should be working. So let's just change this from purple to blue. And then from blue, what we could do is go into the plugin. You go into Simple Decky TDP, and let's just change the TDP to anything 10. It'll change the purple again, right? So let's just change this to blue and just do it one more time just to see, and turn purple. There we go. So blue, purple. Okay, so this means that the custom TDP method is working now. So now that we know it's working, that means that whenever you set the TDP, it'll set fan curves and things so that your device will properly cool down when you set the TDP. So for emulation, there's plenty of guides online for EmuDeck. Just look up Steam Deck EmuDeck guides, and they mostly still apply. So just follow those. But there are some like tips that you'll want to do for emulators on the Legion Go. So for one, when you're installing EmuDeck, you're going to want to consider using the NobaraOS install options if the Linux install option doesn't work. And then besides that, for Dolphin, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to disable vsync in Dolphin. I'll try to keep this section updated for any new tricks and information for emulators. So what we're going to set up next is adding some security to desktop mode. So right now in desktop mode, if you suspend and you resume, it's actually going to resume without a lock screen or anything. So if I press this and let it come back, notice it went straight back into desktop and there's no lock screen, which means if you're logged into any accounts and you're in desktop mode, it's a kind of a problem, right? So what you can actually do is look up screen locking. In screen locking, you can just enable lock screen after waking from sleep, change timing, change all this stuff, whatever you want to do. Hit apply. That's all you have to do. So now while you're in desktop mode, and if you suspend, it's going to show the lock screen, then suspend. And then once we resume, you'll see here now that you're prompted for your password to get back in. But that's really it for security. On game mode, this should not happen. So in game mode, you won't be prompted for a password. So in game mode, you should add a PIN number. So Steam supports a PIN. So I would recommend you set up a PIN number if you so choose to add more security there. But anyways, that's it for security. So one bug on this device is that if we go into the quick access menu and go into the battery, you notice how it says it's full, but clearly if you look at the actual little battery icon, it is not full. And actually that icon is correct, but this is wrong. There is going to be a workaround that we'll set up now where basically you can set the first indicator to always show the battery in the top left corner. So even if this is not working, that the overlay, that level 1 indicator will always show the battery, so you'll always be able to tell what it is. So for that, let's just go back into desktop mode. And if we go back into our downloads, you click home, downloads, and then here, that tricks directory that we had before, there's also this script here, which is that battery overlay indicator for us. So if we go into here, open in terminal, let's just do a chmod +x, set up battery indicator overlay, and then we just do a /setup battery. And that's all you have to do. And if you want to know how this actually works, what this does is if we open it, it makes this folder, and then it just adds this file there. So if we go into that folder, which is home config mango HUD. So if we go back into the file directory /home /config /mango HUD, right? Just created that and created this one file in there. And if we look at it, it has the contents of this file. And you can actually modify this to whatever you want. So this is actually a SteamOS feature. It's not specific to this operating system. So you can look up how to customize the mango HUD overlay. So right now, 1, it means turn it on, 0 means turn it off. So if you want to see FPS as well, you could turn it to 1 and then save it. So it's very customizable. You can play around with it, do whatever you want. But for now, we're just going to get that battery going. So if we now go back to the quick access menu, and now if we show that overlay, you can now see in the top left, you see that battery. So it's 77% right now. Whereas the Steam bug, where it still shows it's full, it's an odd bug, but at least there's a decent workaround for it. But yeah, that's it for the battery indicator. And finally, let's say you decide that Linux isn't for you, and you decide you want to delete it and get Windows back fully on this device, right? So I'll just show you how to do that really quick. First, go into BIOS setup, and make sure your Windows is on top. So make sure it's the first boot option. This is going to be pretty important. But make sure it's the first boot option, click exit, and here you'll have to exit saving changes. So just save changes and exit. So now that you're back in Windows, you could open that Resizer app from before that we used in the beginning of this tutorial. And what you could do here now is you could actually delete partition. So you could delete that partition. And then you also want to delete this partition. And now finally, this is the C drive on Windows. You just resize it and have it fill the rest of the space. Hit OK, hit apply, and that's all you need to do. Easy. So just hit that, hit OK. And now Linux is gone. And that's it for the setup video. So everything should be working at this point. One thing that people have asked me is what I do to get my home screen to look like this. And what I use is if I go into CSS Loader, I use Clean Game View and Switch Like Home to get this sort of view. And then when I click a game, have the full screen view like this. But CSS Loader is a standard deck thing, so you could check the store and figure out whatever you'd want to do. But yeah, that's really it for me.